Namaskar, Professor Katare. मुनीश, मैं बात नहीं कर सकती। Welcome, Professor Mehta. Professor M.S. Mehta. Vice Chancellor King George Medical University, Namaskar.
नमस्कार।
Welcome, ma'am.
सबकी बेटी हूँ, डॉक्टर सोनिया नित्यानंद। I'm Dr. Nitya.
She is the daughter of Professor Nitya Anand.
I know. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Dr. Naveen has also joined, I believe. Welcome, Dr. Naveen.
Thank you.
Professor Katare, Namaskar.
Naveen, all okay with you?
All okay. Thank you.
दिनेश भैया नमस्ते। नमस्ते दिनेश भैया।
Namaste, Surya. Namaste, Surya.
Dr. साहब शुरू करें। The first 4 speakers are here.
नमस्ते आनंद जी।
So, we are ready to start now. Nishima. So I hand over to Nishima. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to one and all. So we've gathered here for the memorial meeting for Professor Nitya Anand, Padma Shri 2012. Professor Nitya Anand was an Indian medicinal chemist who was director of CDRI in Lucknow from 1974 to 84. And he was born in Lialpur, Punjab province, British India on 1st January 1925. In 1948, he was awarded a PhD in organic chemistry from the Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai, and he also received his second PhD from St. John's College at Cambridge University and joined Central Drug Research Institute in Lucknow in Medicinal Chemistry Division in 1951 and later became the director of that institute. His overall research interest has always been in the design, discovery, and development of new drugs using synthetic chemistry approaches. Professor Anand was also a fellow of the Indian National Science Academy. In fact, he was the driving force behind Saint Froment's discovery, also referred commonly to as Saheli. It was the first and only once weekly non-steroidal, non-hormonal oral contraceptive pill in history. In fact, we have much more to learn about him, which we shall in the coming 1 hour with the scientists who have had a close association with them. To proceed with that, I now invite Professor Arun Kumar Grover, who was the ex-Vice Chancellor of University, Punjab University, to please give a brief background to this memorial meeting. Sir, please.
Good afternoon, all. It's indeed my privilege to greet all of you on the occasion of this memorial meeting in honor of an international icon, Dr. Nitya Anand. We aim to seek inspiration and motivation from learning about the lives of great scientists like Professor Nitya Anand. And we shall learn about his life journey as well as numerous contributions that he made over 60 years. We started to hold such memorial meetings 4 years ago during the period of lockdown. The first such meeting was in honor of Professor S.K. Joshi, a friend of many of us in the PU campus, who was a great professor of physics at IIT Roorkee and later on the director of NPL and the director general of CSR. He had made numerous visits to the university and he had many friends in the institution in and around Chandigarh. Our next two meetings were in honor of radio astronomer Professor Govind Sarup. Our next two meetings were in honor of Professor Govind Sarup, radio astronomer and cosmologist, Professor T. Padmanabhan. Both these meetings were organized in association with ISA Mohali. Then we held a meeting in honor of Narendra Singh Kapani, the optoelectronics man, and that was in partnership with IIT Ropa. Then we had meetings in honor of Dr. Sukumar Banerjee, the celebrated chairperson of Atomic Energy Commission. And we also had a meeting in honor of our own Rajesh Kochar, science historian. And I think we had one more meeting. 7 of these meetings were held in the online mode. And today's meeting, of course, is in a hybrid mode. And it is in the chemistry department, because Dr. Nitya Anand had obtained his BSc in chemistry from Government College, Lahore in the year 1943. The science teaching in Lahore had commenced only in the year 1877, when the first professor of science was joined in the form of Mr. J.C. Oman, and he was an Indologist. He was not a trained scientist. He was an Indologist. And the first 2 books that he wrote, okay, I have those names, they're very interesting. His first book, published in 1889, was titled Indian Life, Religion and Social. The second book was titled Where Three Creeds Meet, A Tale of Modern Life. So it was Hindus, Muslims, and the sects of Punjab. So these are the kind of books that he used to write, and he wrote many books. But when he started to teach physics and science, science person, there was no distinction between physics and chemistry. He was conscious that these kids who he was teaching, high school students, they have had no exposure to science at all. So while teaching, he used to set up demonstrations in the class, okay, so to excite people and learn science the right way. So it is in that backdrop, the first 2 students who wrote the chemistry paper in the FA class was in the year 1879. And that was an exam that they passed of the Calcutta University. So the very next year, in 1881, 2 students joined. One of them was Gurudat Vidyarthi, and the chemistry department, it's a Gurudat hall. So that is the reason I recalled this story for you. And the second student, who was his classmate, was none other than Ruchiram Sani. So Ruchiram Sani and Gurudat Vidyarthi studied together in up to the class 8 in government school, Adiwan. Then they did high school from 2 different places, and they came together in Oman's class in FA in the government college. And they were both very much inspired by J.C. Oman. So university comes into being in 82. Calcutta University is replaced by now Punjab University, which has to conduct the exam. So in 1 year, there were 2 annual exams, one in the month of December, and then they shifted to April. And somehow, long story, but then they separated. Ruchiram completed his BA in the year 1884 and took up a job with the meteorology department, went to Calcutta, blah, blah, blah. And he submits an MA in science in the year 1885. Year later, Gurudat Siddhana, by that time he had become Gurudat Vidyarthi. He had already emerged as a great Arya Samaj leader. And the literature says that initially they were all influenced by Brahmo Samaj, but later on Ruchiram Sani remained a part of the Brahmo Samaj, but Gurudat Vidyarthi actually had gone and participated, gone as a delegation from Punjab when Dayanand died in 1883, etc., etc. So Gurudat was a Sanskrit scholar, he was an Arya Samaj leader, blah, blah, blah. And it says that Lala Lajpat Rai was motivated to transform from a Brahma Samajist to Arya Samaj by none other than Gurudat Vidyarthi. So this is, that is why someone took the initiative, the chemistry professor, I think Professor Ram Prakash took the initiative to have the chemistry building being named after Gurudat. And Gurudat actually obtained a first class in MA. It was all self-study. See, Ruchiram Sani had a third class in MSc, but Gurudat Vidyarthi had a first class in MA. But lo and behold, both of them were appointed as a faculty in the government college. Ruchiram Sani by that time was already an officer in the meteorology department posted in Shimla. Gurudat joined immediately. Ruchiram Sani came a few months later, but Gurudat that moved away. He teamed up with Hansraj to create the DAV school, Mahatma Hansraj. So this is how the story goes. But Gurudat Vidyarthi didn't live very long. And he had passed away by 1890. But before that, he had already set up an Arya Samaj Science Institute at Lahore in 1884. The idea of that we should have a science institute where there would be public lectures, science demonstrations, that was motivated by J.C. Oman in 1883. But he is not the first one who set it up. First one to set up is Gurudat. It's Arya Samaj Science Institute. But that folded up a little quickly because anyway he passed away also. So in 1885, Ruchiram Sani and Oman as General Secretary and the Secretary created this Punjab Science Institute, which lasts for a long time, where Ruchiram delivers 500 odd lectures and he is the popularizer of science in Punjab. That is the reason we celebrated his 150th birth year in the backdrop of 150 years of higher education in Punjab. Government College of Lahore was created in January of 1864, which is in between the birth dates of Ruchiram Sani and Gurudat Vidyarthi. One is born April of 63, the other is April of 64. So all these are very inspiring facts. But after these two persons, Ruchiram and Gurudat Vidyarthi, no one else obtains the master's degree in science until the year 1901. Okay, then one more person obtains this degree in 1901, and he is also given a teaching job in government college Lahore. So that is how this ever goes. So the curiosity is, when did first research paper come out of Lahore in chemistry? So the first paper in chemistry came out of Lahore in the year 1908 via B.M. Johns, B. Mowat Johns, who was appointed the first professor of chemistry at Lahore in 1906. But he didn't stay there very long. But he wrote few papers. But all these papers are he himself and few Europeans. No native Indian was involved in the research by B.M. Johns. Anyway, he leaves. B.H. Williston comes as a chemist to replace him. And another person comes, chemist comes to replace him. And that is H.P. Dunnicliffe. I don't know, I think a lot of people in this department would remember Dunnicliffe, because Dunnicliffe was an inorganic chemist. And R.C. Paul was an organic chemist. And he had an overlap with Dunnicliffe 2 decades down the line. So anyway, Dunnicliffe started to do research, and he wrote papers with the native students. So that happens after 1918 onwards. So the scheme for this honor school, which is practiced at Punjab University, even today, that was submitted by Williston, a chemist, in the year. The project report was written. Long story behind that, but it is again a contribution of the chemist to the Punjab University. So honor school commences. Dunnicliffe gets appointed as a professor of inorganic chemistry, because on the basis of research that the Dunnicliffe did at Lahore and the papers that he wrote, he submitted a thesis to Dublin University. So he got a PhD from Ireland in 1921. But Nagar also, by that time had graduated, come back via PhD, arrived in Lahore in the year 1925 as a professor of physical chemistry. So no other subject had that many professors. There is a professor of inorganic chemistry, there is a professor of physical chemistry, there is also a professor of organic chemistry very, very quickly in the form of the former student of P.C. Ray, that is J.N. Ray. So the chemistry and the technical chemistry education was started not by Government College Lahore, but it happened at the FC College Lahore, because a PhD from Princeton had arrived at FC College Lahore, and he started the education in technical chemistry. So, but once the honor school came, the technical chemistry got overshadowed, and actually it got discontinued. So anyway, then the golden period of science, and particularly chemistry, is from 1925 to 1940. Okay, and then war happens, start of the war happens, and all the 3 professors of chemistry from Lahore are pulled in by the government of India into the war effort. But Nagar leaves to create CSIR, G.N. Ray is pulled in to do some medicinal chemistry and get some drugs for the soldiers and so on. And Dunnicliffe also was roped in for all this explosives research. But by that time, enough chemists had been trained, and very good students used to join chemistry, and there were enough good teachers in the colleges. So the chemistry education never suffered. R.C. Paul was the last student of Bhatnagar at Lahore after Bhatnagar leaves. But R.C. Paul finds somebody else. He does a PhD in organic chemistry. R.C. Paul was born in 1920. Our next professor at this campus was O.P. Vij. O.P. Vij. So in between R.C. Paul and O.P. Vij is Nitya Anand, 43. So Nitya Anand, Sukhdev, Hargobind Khurana, Gurbaksh Singh, Nazar Singh, these are all the students, 43, 44, 45. They graduate to post-graduation, and then they go abroad, come back. And then the chemistry honor schools is recommenced. Khurana doesn't get a job, long story, but Nityanand, comes back, and we will hear about the great contributions of Nityanand. So I can go on and on. Maybe one day I'll come and give a longish lecture on how much is there to learn just knowing the heritage of chemistry. Well, it's a great inspirational story. So I'm very happy that so many students are here to learn and get inspired from lives of greats like Professor Nitya Anand. I mean, I'm very happy to share with you that contacts have been made with Professor Sukhdev's family recently. Professor Sukhdev completed 100 years just a few months ago. So I think there should be a session in the university to celebrate the centenary of a living legend, namely Sukhdev, on behalf of the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking us into the scientific past. May I now welcome Professor Alok Dhawan, who is the Director of Center of Biomedical Research, Lucknow. Sir, if you could please share your screen.
Yes, before I do that, thank you very much indeed for having me here. And let me start in the reverse order. The two Nityanands who are here, Naveen and Sonia. I think it's a very humbling experience for me to be talking about Uncle and Professor Nityanand in the same breath, I would say. And of course, in the audience, we have Dr. Girish Sahani, who was the former DG of CSIR, and he also has a very close relationship with Dr. Nityanand. So, very good afternoon to you, sir, as well. And I see a lot of friends of Dr. Nityanand and family members, including Dinesh Bhai, Dr. Saxena, etc. So what I'll now do is share my screen, and I'll just walk you through, I think, my memories of him. I think that's what I have planned it to be. And some of the photographs that I'll be showing you, I got either from Dr. Dinesh Dixit or from the family members. So I think one thing is very clear: we are not celebrating an individual; we are celebrating an institution, the name of which was Dr. Nityanand, Padma Shri Dr. Nityanand. He was. It so happens that CDRI was more fortunate than others to have had his services right from 1951 until he breathed his last. I think it's very difficult to separate the two, CDRI from Dr. Nityanand. I was just trying to think as to how do I introduce him as an individual. So I think, of course, he was a visionary, and everybody is aware of his science, which I'll not delve in much. But he, and I will come to that as well, I think he was a science administrator, a technologist, a policy maker, and I'll come to that as well, an institution builder, a family man, again, I'll come to that, and a very spiritual person to begin with. Now, one by one, I would say that if you look at his administrative skills in science, I think people need to learn how to do leadership from him. Right from, I would say, a driver or a person when you enter, and I still remember some anecdotes which I'll share. He was entering CDRI, and one of the security guards stopped him to look at his I-card. He was a new guard who had come into the CDRI, and he stopped him for his I-card. And somebody said, "You don't know he's a director," but he said, "No, that's his duty. Let him do it." And although that guy felt very bad, but then that's how Professor Nityanand was. And I still remember another gentleman who actually was not feeling well, and Dr. Nityanand immediately took out his car, brought him to SGPGI, got his work done, and he was the director at that time. He could have sent anyone. He said, "No, I've known you for so long, I'll take you personally." So I think he, as an administrator, apart from science, I think he had a very humane qualities in him, which were very fruitful in building up CDRI at that point in time. The other thing I kept hearing from him was the 4 o'clock coffee, which he used to have. I think if your chemistry is right, you succeed, and he's a brilliant example of that. Chemistry in all respects. So the 4 o'clock coffee would be between him, my father, Professor B. N. Dhawan, Dr. V.P. Kamboj, and either Dr. Bhakuni or some other chemist would be there. So they would plan out every day what's going to happen the next day, and how the drug pipeline has to be, and so on and so forth. So I think he was a phenomenal administrator right from the very beginning. In terms of technology, I think I will never forget what Girish used to say, that we keep publishing, or we keep making cellulose, if I remember the word correctly, Dr. Sani. And but it's always good, even if you have one drug, that's good enough for your lifetime. But I think what Dr. Nityanand did was publish around 400 publications, even more. The last one I saw was in 2022, but also had over 100 patents, plus of course the drugs and things that he brought out. But to do all that, it was very important for him to have policy in place. So what he did was not only have policy in place in the Uttar Pradesh government, but also in the government of India, to ensure that the sort of IPR policy was in place. He ensured that we had enough training resource for human or the people coming into pharmaceutical research. So Naipur Mohali was his brainchild. He brought about IPC into the picture. He supported industry like no one, I would say, right from the very beginning. And I'll not name the industry, but I think several industry, pharmaceutical industry, and where they are now, owe it to Professor Nityanand. So I think in those terms, apart from CDRI and Naipur, I think he built a whole ecosystem, which he ensured was intact all the time. And wherever there was an issue, he would go up to the government and ensure that the policy got changed and things were in place. And he was also part of the Prime Minister's Scientific Advisory Council at some point in time. So I think as an individual, the kind of contributions one can make in a lifetime are phenomenal. And I would say that a person of his stature, I mean, even dozens of people get together may not be able to do what he's been able to do in a lifetime. And of course, he was very spiritual and very compassionate. And there are several stories of that as well, apart from supporting many families and their children to go and study in schools. He also went ahead and supported sort of ashram where students would study, and he would support that as well. So I think he was a great human being, a great person whom I always looked up to without fail for anything that I required. And these are some pictures of the family. Why I wrote CSR family, because Dr. Nityanand and those of you who don't know his wife, Dr. Nityanand, both were in CDRI. And so, in fact, both the three kids, Naveen, Sonia, and Neeraj, they basically have CSR blood in them. And that is why they perhaps went into science in some sense or the other. And Sonia has done, all the three have done phenomenally well. And we all feel so proud that, all of them are sitting on the pinnacle of their careers. Sonia is currently the Vice Chancellor of King George Medical University, and after completing her medicine, she also did a PhD. So that was another, I would say, way that Professor Nityanand and Mrs. Nityanand were able to guide their children where they are now. Of course, he got the Padma Shri in 2012, which all of us feel was too little too late, but nonetheless, he was recognized for his immense contribution to science, especially for the masses. And the one thing I will never forget, I mean, this is CDRI where he was working, and the Saheli, which was talked about earlier, is now part of the Health and Family Welfare Program. But if you look at this book on your left side of my screen, right, maybe on your screen, it is dated 2022. So one thing he never lost touch of was the number of publications that were getting published across the world and the patents on Centroman. And this would be an annual volume every year. And in fact, I'm going to understand that he was given a volume this year as well. But this is a photograph that I took while I was talking to him. And this was what he breathed till the end. I think every time you meet him, he will tell something or the other about Centroman and how we can take it forward for other disease conditions, because this is a non-toxic drug. And since it is non-steroidal, it is very useful for other indications as well. So I think some of these studies are now going on between CDRI and perhaps KGMU as well. But the other thing I really loved about him that CSIR and Dr. Nitya Anand were inseparable. He was just a phone call away, and these are some pictures of our Golden Jubilee celebration of CSIR IITR. And as soon as I told him that some of the people are coming from outside and I'd like to have you, he immediately came. And he had an eye for detail, I must share. Small things that he used to tell me, which every time I used to gain from him, put it in place, and then next time he'd come, he'll appreciate it that you've done it. And here is a long list of CSI directors standing here, and of course the then principal of KGMU, Professor P.K. Mishra as well, Dr. Kamboj is there, Dr. Seth, Professor P.S. Chauhan from BRC, Professor B.N. Dhawan, Professor Tandon, Pramod Tandon, he was the Vice Chancellor of NEHU, and the other NBRA directors are here as well. So we always had the privilege of having him over. And this was another, so I'm just telling that how he went around in all the institutes. That was IITR, this is CMAP. And this was the third Diamond Jubilee lecture to be given by Professor R.A. Mashelkar, who was the former DG of CSIR as well. And immediately agreed to come and sort of chair the session. And again, you see a large number of directors of CSIR who were present at this occasion. This was again taken at one of the Golden Jubilee lectures of IITR, where Professor Arun Tiwari, who is a missile scientist and worked with Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, he was to come and deliver the talk, and he requested Professor Nitya Anand to chair the session, and he very readily agreed to do that. This was at CDRI, and you can see Professor Sahani, Girish Sahani was there as well. And this was the annual day of CDRI. That is one thing he never missed. And, there was always a spark in his eyes when he would come. So you have Rajiv Modi as well, Dr. Kamboj. This was sometime 2018, February. There's a very poignant picture. I would say a picture that I would never forget. This was Dr. R.P. Rastogi. He joined, I think, about the same time as Dr. Nitya Anand. And Dr. Nitya Anand is felicitating him, I think, on his 90th birthday, if not 92nd. And when the two sat together, I think they had over, and that's where I clicked the picture inside my car. I think maybe this was 92, 93, and Dr. Nitya Anand was 88 or 89. So between the two, they had 180 years of experience. When I told Dr. Nitya Anand, he really smiled at that point in time, and both were chemists. So I thought it was a fantastic. And he would make it a point to come to each of these, small events. This was a Pensioners Welfare Association event where people above the age of 80 were being recognized. This brings back me to a point where we had invited Professor Nitya Anand to a program which was for microbiologists. And I asked Dr. Nitya Anand, can you tell me one thing which I am not aware of and, which would be useful for microbiology? He said, yes. And this paper that you see actually he had brought with him with a sort of flag on it. And he said, well, Alok, you know what? I got a Rockefeller fellowship and I went to Harvard Medical School in the Department of Microbiology because I thought if I don't know microbiology, how am I going to ever make antimicrobials? I thought that was brilliant of a chemist to say this at that point in time. A person would love to go and work with a chemist of some stature, but he decided to go to a microbiologist. And how many of us would take that risk to go there and do the way he did? And he actually brought a book with him. That was the autobiography of the person with whom he had worked. And he had a paragraph on Dr. Nitya Anand saying that how that department benefited because a chemist joined him. So I think the interdisciplinary nature with which he worked was remarkable, and his understanding of the subject, both in biology and chemistry, was exceptionally brilliant. This again is a very sort of historic picture where Professor P. Balram had come to deliver a talk, and he chaired the session. And my father and Dr. Seth and Dr. composure, all there. So it was always a good moment for us. And this was the oration of our founder of CSIR IITR, Dr. Zaidi, and Professor P. Balram had given this talk, where Dr. Nitya Anand shared. This was perhaps the last CDRI Foundation Day, and look at the spark in his eyes. I mean, I always used to draw a lot of energy and a lot of inspiration from him. And Dinesh bhai, you recall this? I think this was a wedding celebration in Lucknow. You have Dr. Khetrapal, and this story I'd like to share here again. So one of the institutions that Dr. Nityanand was instrumental in bringing up was the Center of Biomedical Research, of which I'm the director now. And the story goes that he spoke to the director of SGPG at some point in time that until less, and this was way back in 97, that until unless you bring in new technologies for disease diagnosis and therapeutics, how would you ever move forward in medical science? And he said one of that would be metabolomics using NMR. And the then director of SGPJ, Professor Mahendra Bhandari, said, well, we don't have experts in the field. And so Dr. Nityanand volunteered and said, I'll get you one. And so he brought in Dr. Khetrapal from Indian Institute of Science, and they wrote a grant through SGPGI to Department of Science Technology, which got funded. And we had this facility up and running since about 1999. And then 2006, it became an independent institute under the leadership of Professor Khetrapal. So when I say he was a visionary, he could see where the science is going and move according to that. And I think now a lot of patients are reaping the benefit of this institute in terms of both NMR as well as MRI. This was another thing I'll never forget. This is when all of us became directors. So this is myself, my brother-in-law, Professor Rakesh Kapoor, he became director of SGPJ, all in the same year, and Dr. Madhu Dixit, she became director of CDRI. And Dr. Nityanand, you can see how happy he is. He said, well, I need to host a party at home to celebrate all the people who I've known since childhood. And they now are all heading the different institutes in Lucknow. So he hosted a party at home, and we had a really good time with him in the evening. So I think these are moments that I will cherish for life, and they're etched in my memory forever, I think. As I mentioned, he would never, and this photograph I especially put in because he's carrying a Nature magazine with him. You'll never find him going anywhere without Nature or Science or one of these journals, plus a notebook that you'll carry all the time with him and a pen. So that was Dr. Nityanand for you. I think that all the time he will be updated to the current literature that is around. If he cannot download an article, if it's there in the reference, he will ask someone, call you and ask you. This was in 2022, perhaps. I went to his home and gave him the annual report. And you can see just after taking this picture, he forgot that I was sitting next to him. He just started, turning the page and reading about the annual report. And then he said, well, Alok, you've done a pretty good job in compiling what this institution is doing. And I'll write a letter separately to you about this annual report and how this institution has taken up shape because I was involved with this institute. And he again narrated a lot of stories about the institution as it grew up. So I think he was a phenomenal person. And here you are. This is NBRI, National Botanical Research Institute. So that covers all the 4 institutes. And as soon as he came to know that Dr. Sani was also coming to inaugurate the flower show, Chrysanthemum flower show, he immediately agreed to go there as well. And he met Dr. Sani and his wife. And again, you see the smile on his face always without fail, and the warmth that he brings along with him. It was remarkable. So this was one of the 2010 meetings of NMR, which was held at CBMR. And you have Dr. Nityanand for obvious reasons, because he was one of the persons who started CBMR, and the then governor of UP, and the then director of SGPJ, and Dr. Khetrapal, the director of CBMR. So I owe this position where I am today to Dr. Nityanand. Then we celebrated the 98th birthday, and here you are, the child in him was there till the end, I would say. And you can see how happy he was blowing out the candle, and then of course Sonia treating him with the cake. And on a personal note, I gifted him a bouquet of 100 roses, telling him that we'll be celebrating his 100th soon. And of course, I gifted him a collage of photos. This was, I think, January of 23, right? So 23 January, right? So then he said, well, Alok, and this was just done in a hurry. So he said, well, you get it in a photo frame, and then I'll see what to do with this, because these are good memories for me as well. And this was the celebrations that actually came out in the Times of India the very next day, that we sort of celebrated Dr. Nityanand's birthday. The one thing you'll never ever find him without are his papers and books about Central Man and the data, etc. He'll keep discussing. So that's one side. Of the other side, again, I always cherish about him is the Holi of 23, when I went to greet him and take his blessings. He said, "Alok, apne piche dekho, wo photo lagi jo tumne humko di thi." So every day when I get up, I see the photographs. So I said, what can I say? I'm truly blessed to have a person of Dr. Nityanand's stature who keeps everyone in his heart and blesses us all the time. I don't know how many of you can actually identify with Dr. Nityanand, but here he is in the middle. So he said कि हम थोड़ा सा इनके बराबर हो जाते हैं. बच्चे से बोला तुम छोटी हो, मैं तुम्हारे बराबर हो, कितना फोटो खिंचाता हूँ. And this was again, we were organizing the Krishnamurti Environmental Day operation, and Dr. Balu, who was the former director of CCMB, had come to deliver the talk, and Dr. Nityanand, of course, was chairing the session. But these are the prizes that the kids got, and Dr. Nityanand was so happy to be one of them. And this again, we went to another institution, or a school rather, modern school in Lucknow, and he was not only an advisor, but he was a mentor to the school. And this was a science exhibition that young kids had put up. And he was so happy, and you can see a small card in his hand, which the students had given him. And he's trying to understand what these kids are doing in terms of science, and trying to interact with them as well. So it was remarkable. And this again, I'll never forget. This is my son's wedding in the end of 22. And I was given to understand by Sonia that he'll not be able to make it because of his health. And suddenly I was given to understand that he's coming. So he said, well, Alok, I've come to bless your children. I couldn't stay home, and come what may, I had to come. So it was really one of those moments that again will always be cherished by our family. And I must mention here that both our family and Dr. Nityanand's family were an extended family, if I may use that word. And we've had a very good, the children had a good childhood together. And of course, my father and my mother and Dr. Nityanand and his wife both had a very strong bonding till the end. Some more photographs for you. So I think I will stop here, but I would say that the legacy of Dr. Nityanand will forever remain with us. I think as an individual, what he's been able to do is remarkable. He has shaped the lives of several generations of chemists. Not only chemists, I would say several of his students have become directors of institutions, very senior people in the pharma industry. And so I think nobody will ever forget the name of Dr. Nityanand, and his name will be etched in the history of Indian science. And with this, I pay my salutations to Dr. Nityanand. And I also would like to say how privileged I am again to be speaking at this occasion. And I would say that I think Sonia and Naveen are very blessed to have been born in this family, and to Dr. Nityanand. I think it's such a privilege that a person of his stature and such a humble person, I would say, a person who is always seeking knowledge with a spirit of inquiry, and a person who was fond of food as well. So I've had several times when we had breakfast together on a Sunday morning. And I would say to him, कि सर आपकी तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, let me ask Sonia and then I'll come. So he said कि मैं जब तुम्हें बुला रहा हूँ तो सोनिया कौन होती है मना करने वाली. So you just come and we'll have breakfast together. So even till the end he was commanding, in all respects. And I think I met him middle of December. We had our scientific advisory council meeting, and Dr. C.M. Gupta had come, and so we went and met him in SGPGI. We had our masks on, so I told Dr. C.M. Gupta, maybe he'll not be able to recognize you, so maybe you can just pull down your mask and show him your face, and he'll be able to recognize. And as soon as Dr. C.M. Gupta pulled down his mask, he brought out his hand to shake hands with Dr. C.M. Gupta, which he caught hold of very strongly. He had a very strong grip. And then Dr. C.M. Gupta told me कि आलोक यार यहाँ से चलना चाहिए, ICU में बहुत देर खड़ा होना ठीक नहीं है. तो उसने कहा डॉक्टर साहब मैं चलता हूँ. So he left his hand and he put his hand forward to me and he caught my hand. He said, I said, sir, I have to go. Then he shook his hand. No, you just keep standing here, which I did for about 5 minutes. And then I had to leave because I didn't want both of us to be in the ICU. Generally, I will not tell a lie to him ever in my life, but that time I had to tell him because we both had to leave. So I said, sir, मैं Dr. C.M. Gupta को अपने department छोड़ के वापस आता हूँ. So then immediately he released my hand. He said, okay, and just put a mild thumbs up and he said, fine. So then both of us left. So I think, and at some point in time when he was very hale and hearty, we used to discuss, he said, Alok, 125 is what I want to live. I want to see that figure as well. So I think he had a very strong willpower, along with the science as a human being. I have yet to see a person like him. So with this, I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and Vandaman to Dr. Nitya Anand. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. So now I would like to request Dr. Nitya Anand to say a few words.
Dr. Nitya Anand, thank you very much for
Naveen, you're
joining.
muted. You're muted now.
Yeah,
Dr.
my name
Naveen,
is, yes,
Please
hello.
unmute yourself. We are waiting.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Naveen Nitya Anand, and I'm the son of late Dr. Nitya Anand. I have two siblings, an elder brother Neeraj, and my very talented younger sister Sonia, who's on this call as well. My father and I share many things, including being alumni of two institutions, Punjab University and the University of Cambridge. So I've been asked to say a few words about my father today. I'm doing this on behalf of my siblings. I'm not going to talk about the professional and immense contributions of my father to society, science, and the country. I shall leave this to these very talented peers and students who will be far more eloquent than myself, but I will focus on some personal reflections. Upon getting the sad news of his passing, I made arrangements to fly out to India as soon as possible. The journey, including the long flight to Delhi, were daunting and lonely. I was very gloomy and despondent, with many memories floating in my head. But through the anguish, while over the vast snow-covered land mass of the Siberian steppes, a gradual calm descended upon me. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude towards the universe, towards Almighty, towards nature, call it what you may, at the fact that I could say that I had a father, that he was like Nitya Anand for 63 years, for my sibling, give or take a few years. Of course, this applies to most of you gathered here at this memorial meeting, who also have had a relationship with him, sometimes over considerable periods of time. This is something to be thankful for, and I take great comfort in this, that fortune has bestowed upon us. It brings to me a semblance of peace, accommodation, and reconciliation with the inevitable, and I hope this does that to you as well. This long and fruitful life of my father was made possible by many factors, some of which are the following. For those who know him, he led a very disciplined and relatively simple day-to-day life. He believed in moderation and simplicity, Material things were for him just facilitators to life and not an end in themselves. Of course, genetics plays a large role. He was from the old stock in Punjab. He had a supportive family, my grandparents, my mother, my siblings, their spouses, his grandchildren, his extended family of brothers, sister, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, and his relationships with them. And very importantly, his colleagues and friends, all of you, his students who all transcended to become lifelong friends. It basically is social and professional network, which were a source of great joy and support to him. My father was essentially a social person. He believed that enriching society and supporting others was the key to a happy and successful way of living. He did not believe in a life of solitude. Lastly, but most importantly, a key factor was, I think, that his lifelong sense of purpose. This kept him alive for a long time, and I will talk about this a bit more. In this case, it was my father's strong belief that everyone should have an individual living philosophy, which they believe would define their purpose of life. He had interest in not in just science, but also in philosophical reflections to enable a better understanding of daily events of life. And Alok has referred to his spirituality. In his younger days, my father read a lot in order to formulate this understanding. Just as he took up science and medicine to help alleviate the physical suffering of the body through understanding of biological processes and generation of new drugs, he reasoned that philosophy was also required to nourish and heal the soul. This love of science and philosophy is something I share with my father, and we had many discussions on these matters and the intersection of both. In later years, as I learned new things, I talked to him about new ideas, about things like Roman and Greek thoughts, schools of Stoicism and philosophy, which are not dissimilar to many of our own ideas about conduct in a religion. I used to read to him passages from Meditations and Seneca's letters. In any event, drawing all the conversations with my father, I believe that he formulated his philosophy of life on the following main pillars. The first, I think, was logic and reasoning. These are fundamental gifts to humanity, he believed, the exercise of which can bring harmony and peace. These, if you will, provide the fence of a figurative field which one cultivates through life. The second was science. He was a practitioner. This is self-explanatory. The practice of this discipline furthers knowledge and understanding, and this can be likened to the field which you cultivate. The third pillar, I think, is ethics. This was a pillar which was most important to my father. Of all things, ethics was very, very dear to him. Those who know him well will appreciate this. Continuing on the analogy of cultivation theme above, ethics is like the crop, the outcome, the product, the goal. And then, as my sister pointed out to me, there was his compassion. And coupled to ethics was his compassion for people, animals, all living things. As you know, he was a lifelong vegetarian out of conviction, as I am. This living philosophy and values allowed my father to go on to a very productive life. As you all know, and as people have pointed out, he made numerous discoveries, he innovated. He added to the sum total of knowledge through practicing science, mentored students, collaborated, published numerous articles and chapters. He participated in numerous committees and policy forums. He supported educational institutions like NIPER, all in a very ethical manner. That is why, in addition to these benefits of knowledge and drug discovery to society, which are important, his was a life well lived, and a life full of what can be broadly defined as virtue. I hope you will all agree with me that he did live virtuously, and this enabled him to develop a measure of tranquility and calmness in his demeanor, which was his hallmark, and which in turn endeared him to people even more. I shall close. I won't go on and infinitum. I will close now with a poem which he recited to me at times. It was also a favorite of Pandit Nehru, where he probably first heard it. So in the eternal words of Robert Frost, the words are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Well, my father, you have completed your journey. You can now walk the woods, wander the gardens you loved so much. You have earned your rest. You kept your promises. Now it is left to us, all of us, to keep the promises and continue his legacy. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.
Thank you, Neeraj.
Thank you, sir, for those beautiful words and for bringing forth glimpses of this multifaceted personality. Thank you. I now request Dr. Girish Sahni to come and say a few words. Dr. Girish Sahni has been the DG of CSIR.
Thank you very much. It's a very, very special occasion to address all my dear friends, young students. Is it okay? Yeah. Your call. Good afternoon. Namaskar. It's my privilege to be here today amongst friends and admirers of Professor Nitya Anand. I see so many friends in the audience and linked to the system. Family and friends of Professor Nitya Anand, admirers, almost worshippers. They say old generals fade away. And Professor Nitya Anand did not fade away. He straddled the landscape on a white stallion from his early professional life to the last day that he lived and graced this world. He showed us the way. For me personally, he was a great inspiration because he showed what could be done, what can be done. Almost single-handedly, and that's probably a little conservative, with his vast admirers and team people in CDRI and elsewhere in other institutions. He brought about a revolution in the new medicine field. Anybody who's even remotely connected to medicinal chemistry, drugs, commercial side of production, serving society through new drugs and medicine therapeutics, Professor Nitya Anand will long live in our memories as long as we live and the coming generations. They say that you can be admired, you can be respected, but not entirely loved. You can be admired, he was loved, he was respected. Very few people attained that level. Mahatma Gandhi was one. And in that sense, Professor Nitya Anand was a Renaissance man. He was a true Indian and as well as an internationalist. His contribution, the institution's contribution to a whole pipeline of drugs, it's almost unbelievable. Now we have hundreds of institutions engaged to therapeutics and medicines and etc., the whole hallmark. But look at the output that he as a leader generated, he personally generated. With these words, I give great homage, heartfelt homage to him, and wish that the institution he headed, not just CDRA, he gave great leadership to CSIR and the scientific community. Hope his flame remains alive, keeps burning, shines in the future. Thank you. Thank you.
So well said, Dr. Sahni. Loved, respected, and admired. Before we go on to Professor Katare, there is a message to be read out from messages from Dr. R.K. Kohli. Professor Kohli is from this university and presently, after donning many caps, he's presently serving as Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Mohali. Professor Kohli's message is, my respectful namaskar to my colleagues and friends. I am sorry for my absence and the deprivation of meeting you all from this meeting on the occasion of remembering a towering applied chemist, Professor Nitya Anand, a sparkling Kukren who has been remembering a towering applied chemist, a fellow of all the 3 national science academies in India, and former president of the Indian Pharmaceutical Congress 1984. Dr. Anand's contributions to medicinal chemistry are innumerable. His significant discoveries and 130 patents of new drugs, such as centroman, a non-steroidal contraceptive, butindol, I hope I'm reading it right, a neuropeptic, and buridine, a local anesthetic, will go long in the history of mankind. He had been a force in formulating the drug policy of India. His contributions as an advisor and consultant to various scientific bodies and institutions like WHO, UNIDO, UNCTAD, and industry remain unmatched. Bestowing on him the Padma Shri, the Government of India has honorably recognized his contributions to mankind. We all feel proud of him and pray to the Almighty to grant peace to his departed noble soul. With warm regards to all, Jai Hind. This was the message from Professor R.K. Kohli. And now I request Dr. O.P. Katare, professor from Punjab University, UIPS, University Institute of Pharmaceutical Studies, Professor Katare.
Very good afternoon to all. My heartfelt hello. Is it okay?
परसों फिर आया था फोन देने
किसका
बेटे के लिए
ओ
जो डीपी नहीं थी
हाँ
मैंने उठाया ही नहीं सेम डीपी थी
हाँ
नंबर दूसरा था
हाँ
There is somebody called Mala iPhone. Please switch off your voice.
Very good afternoon. My heartful greetings on this very auspicious day when we are paying our homage, Shraddhanjali to the great late legendary Nityananda ji, not Nityananda ji, Nitya Anand ji. It came to me that why it is his guide, Venkataramanji, put it from Nityanand to Nitya Anand. It makes sense. We talk, he's a great person, he's a humanitarian, and he's a spiritual person. What spirit was there and how was he spiritual? And why he was always in the mood, मनोभाव जिसको हम बोलते हैं हिंदी में, वो उस आनंद की अवस्था में रहते होंगे. Because he was as Sani Saab said, love. He was love, and he was a love, personified love. वो उसी भाव में रहते होंगे, उसी भाव में काम करते होंगे. एक बात, what I want to share which connects to the yoga philosophy. It is said by his son, the philosophy is more important even in science. So he was in Anand, and in a spiritual, the goal, the Swami Vivekananda see just by the side of his table, what could have been the spirit? कहाँ से ये नम्रता, कहाँ से ये विनम्रता आई होगी और कहाँ से उनका इतना बड़ा दायरा केमिस्ट्री से बायोकेमिस्ट्री से लेके माइक्रोबायोलॉजी तक फैला होगा, जिसको हम कहते हैं कॉन्शियसनेस. It makes sense to understand that his scientific consciousness belongs to his humility. the ego factor, egolessness. So when we talk of a mind capacity, what could have been its mindset? We think of a mind in general, but it is a mindset. Is यदि हम पतंजलि की बात को समझें, योगा की बात को समझें, स्पिरिचुअलिटी की बात को समझने के लिए तैयार हो, तो मन, बुद्धि, चित्त और अहंकार, ये चार चीजें सामने आती हैं। तो मन अकेला नहीं है, उसमें ईगो का बहुत बड़ा रोल है। ईगो यदि आप बोलते हैं ना कि इज ए ग्राउंडेड, है ना, बहुत ही डाउन टू अर्थ थे, मतलब ग्राउंड पे थे, मतलब उनकी जीरो ईगो जो थी बिल्कुल कम थी, रादर जीरो थी। जीरो का मतलब खत्म होने से नहीं होता है, जीरो बहुत पावरफुल होता है। सो इट वाज हिज ईगोलेसनेस down to the zero that made him a hero, and because of this his buddhi was turned into the vivek. So there's a huge difference from buddhi to vivek. Ability to judge, ability to decide, ability to intuit, it all belongs to this particular entity, that's vivek. So buddhi bhi vivek mein thi, humble थे, नम्र थे, और इसीलिए उनका चेतना का विस्तार था। स्वामी विवेकानंद कहते हैं कि पूरी ब्रह्मांड में चेतना समा जाती है, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं मेरे सामने जो छुपा हो। इट रिलेट्स टू हिज पर्सोना। इस तरीके से उनने केमिस्ट्री में नहीं पकड़ा, बल्कि माइक्रोबायोलॉजी को भी, माइक्रोबायोलॉजी में भी केमिस्ट्री देखी। Of course, it is only the chemistry that is prevailing there in the interior of the microbiology, along with physics, of course. Physics we cannot lead because all the energy field and the consciousness and what you call electromagnetic field and all the quantum science, but it relates from one data to another data. That's why we are probably. So he was a full of this क्या कहें, spiritual persona. साइंटिफिक पर्सोना, स्पिरिचुअल पर्सोना। तो कहने के लिए बहुत कुछ कहा जा सकता है। मेरा तो उनसे एसोसिएशन एक बार नाइपर में मिले थे 2007 or 8 अराउंड। संजीत वाज देयर, देन ही केम, सर ने इनवाइट किया था 2014 में। और जब प्रोफेसर हरकिशन सिंह जी गए थे तब उनका मेरे पास फोन आया था कि मैंने सुना है ऐसा हो गया है। तो सो हम्बल, आपसे कुछ मिनट ही इंटरेक्शन था, लेकिन उन्हें एक बहुत गहरी छाप छोड़ी कि एक इतना बड़ा साइंटिस्ट कितना हम्बल हो सकता है। तो इस करके जब सर ने मेरे को कहा तो मेरे मन में कहा कि मैं इसको कैसे श्रद्धांजलि दूं। तो मेरे आजकल हमारा रिटायरमेंट के बाद का टाइम आ गया है, तो हम कविताएं लिखने लगे हैं। कुछ कविताएं, एक कुछ चंद लाइन है। अंतिम श्रद्धांजलि, विदाई भावगीत। क्या था उनका ज्ञान और विज्ञान, जग नहीं आज अनजान। क्या था उनका ज्ञान और विज्ञान, जग नहीं आज अनजान। पराक्रम पुरुषार्थ परिपूर्ण कर्मयोगी, खोजी थे वे उच्च आत्मा महान। बंजर भूमि खेती शोध करने का था साहस। बंजर भूमि रही होगी उस वक्त, है ना, पीएच मीटर ही बड़ी मुश्किल से मिलता रहा होगा। साहस, पेड़ उगाए और फैलाए, सहेली फल भी ले आए। दे दी पहली भारत एक दवाई, बनी विश्व पहचान। Probably the first। क्या ही अब हम याद करें जिनको भुलाना नहीं आसान। याद उसको करते हैं जिसको भुलाना नहीं आसान। पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी आने वाली फूलेगी फलेगी, उनकी छतरी छाया ज्ञान। करते हम करबद्ध प्रार्थना, उनकी अंतिम आध्यात्मिक ऊंची उछाल। चमके वे सूरज से जैसी उनकी आन बान और शान। May the legend Dr. Nitya Anand ji live long in our hearts of hearts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Katare. मन, बुद्धि, अहम और चित्त से परे इस विशाल व्यक्तित्व से हमें अवगत कराने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। And now I request Professor T.R. Bharadwaj, Professor Tilak Bharadwaj from Baddi University. Actually, he's our very own Professor Bharadwaj, but now I believe he's in Baddi University, to come and say a few words. Professor Bharadwaj.
Mr. Neeraj, Dr. Nityanand, Dr. Sonia, Dr. Arun, Dr. Dharamveer, distinguished guests, participants, my dear students. My association with the Dr. Nitya Anand starts from 1976. In 1973, when Chandoni was discovered, invented at the Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences at that time, later on it is University Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences by Professor Harkisan Singh. You thought that there can be some more studies with respect to the chandonium, maybe pertaining to the efficacy or structure-activity relationship. And in that context, we were to prepare some analogs of chandonium. Professor Harkisan Singh, Padma Shri, my guru, he contacted Professor Dr. Nitya Anand, and since we were not having NMR or these facilities at Punjab University at that time, I was asked to go to CDRI to form some reactions. So in the summer vacations, June, July of 1973, I went to the CDRI. I met Professor Dr. Nitya Anand. He was so humble, helpful, sporting. He sent me to head of the medicinal chemistry department, Dr. M.M. Dhar, and instructed his team head, Dr. Supravat Ray, who was scientist B at that time, to help me in those experiments. Of course, that lab was also shared by Dr. R.S. Kapil, who later on became the director of IIIM Jammu, and numerous PhD students were working in that lab. Centromans or the CELI was invented during those days, and they were further doing marketing or other formalities with respect to its launch. Of course, the experimental part was completed in few weeks or few months. But what I learned from there, the working culture, dedication of Dr. Nitya Anand, visiting the lab in spite of meeting, not only at CDRI Lucknow, but at Delhi also. He used to go very frequently. But before leaving or after reaching, landing at Lucknow, daily he used to come to the lab and ask his students and me in particular that how his work is going on. So that kind of approach was extended to me, and I was feeling at home, mixed up with all the researchers in their institutions. And that's how we could again synthesize dihydrochandonium analogs. Later on, from 1977 to 1982, his younger son, Dr. Naveen, he joined B Farm in 77 and completed in 82. During those days also, Dr. Nitya Anand used to come to Chandigarh or to meet his son, who was very dearer to him, and we used to often meet. That was the stage. As far as pharma industry is concerned, after the Indian Patent Act 1970, wherein process patenting was adopted by India, it was boost to the pharma industry of India, that the pharma industry started looking for the alternative processes, alternative routes with respect to the same chemical entity, which was again patented in the rest of the world, but for which we could work and provide the same drug at cheaper, cost effective. And that was the initiation of pharma industry, which was again, of course, initiated by Dr. Nitya Anand. Then in 1985, at the IPC at Hyderabad, he was president of that conference or IPC, and he, in presidential address, addressed emphatically told the industry, pharma industry, that there should be some interaction, strong bonding between the institutions, teaching institutions, research institutions, and the industry, which was again being headed or in the hands of the industry. Because he was of the opinion that ultimately we are to expand, and for that, the man force is required. Properly skilled, trained persons are needed. And that's the reason now you can see the pharma industry has grown to such an extent that we are attaining third position globally, and every third formulation in the world belongs to Indian manufacturing unit. So that kind of attainment has been achieved. Then in 25th January, 1987, we met at INSA, Delhi. It was merit promotion scheme interview, and he was expert in that also. Then thereafterwards, in 1993, when the NIPER was started, it was again in the board of governors, he was the chairing that, and the institution has been set up, which has made its own name, and on account of its popularity, attainment, achievements with respect to the research, manpower creations, and help to the industry, that 7 new NIPERs have come up in India. Friends, we have attained good positions with respect to the formulations, API or bulk drugs, and you will be happy to know that near in our neighborhood is in Himachal, bulk drug park is already coming up near Pune at Haroli. Not only that, the main problem with respect to the Indian heritage or Indian system, Ayurvedic and others, started when we adopted Patent Act, Global Patent Act, since 2005. All scientists who are working in the area of nutraceuticals or phytochemicals, they started patenting neem, haldi, and basmati and others also. That was again very difficult task for the Indian government or Indian scientists, how to stop that. Under the leadership of, again, Dr. Nitya Anand, the material, sportive evidences, published literature, books, these were provided to the US judiciary, that is already in the public domain. How can it be patented? And after maybe strong evidences and again the protections, we could win the case, and that was stopped. Otherwise, you can see the 60% of the drugs, they have their origin from the natural sources, and the nutraceuticals again have more market as compared to the pharmaceuticals, because all these nutraceuticals are OTC, over the counter, for which prescription is not required. At CDRI, numerous drugs have been invented. the priority of Dr. Nitya Anand was towards the diseases for which no other country, European or US companies or multinationals were paying their attentions. Tropical diseases, infectious diseases, malaria, TB, leishmaniasis, filariasis. For those also, the priority was given to these kind of tropical diseases. And one was the population. And the population control was again taken care of by the drug, which was again invented by Dr. Nitya Anand and his team comprising of Supervatre and Cole. That's saline, which is again being clinically used for the contraceptions. So friends, in my opinion, Dr. Nitya Anand is the most celebrated Indian medicinal chemist of India. And it's very rare to have such a personality. And I'm thankful, grateful, happy that I've been associated or have been having some memories of his days or time spent with him, some moments. My last interactions with the Dr. Nitya Anand was around 2018 or so. We used to meet at Naiper, maybe in some meetings, or as and when they have annual functions or some conferences. So on one such conferences, after the meeting, we were sitting outside on the table. Myself, Dr. Bamba Saab, Mrs. Bamba Saab, Dr. Nitya Anand were there. And both of them, they were discussing their days spent at Cambridge. Dr. Bamba said that as and when I used to get up in the morning, Dr. Nitya Anand used to be in the lab. And before I slept, he was coming afterwards. So that kind of dedication, sincerity, and he was so humble. I have not seen him shouting on the. And then the students of him, he has all admirations for them, sportive. So my homage to his great personality, and again prayer to the God that his soul may rest in peace, and family members may be given strength and courage to bear this loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bharadwaj, for acquainting us with those sweeping contributions made by Dr. Nitya Anand. I now request Dr. V.K. Kapoor, again from Pharmaceutical Sciences of Punjab University. Dr. V.K. Kapoor.
Sir Arun Grover and other distinguished dignitaries present. I'm very grateful to the organizers of this memorial meeting to associate me and express my gratefulness to the organizers. See, I have been listening to the various lectures delivered by late Dr. Nitya Anand since my student days. His lectures are full of wisdom, scientific informations and enlightening. I felt so much impressed by his humble personality, full of humility, and his tremendous knowledge that I accepted him as my guru the way Eklavya accepted Dronacharya as his guru. My deep association with Professor Nityanand was when I was nominated as a member of scientific body of the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, which Dr. Nityanand was heading. Those 6 or 7 years were the golden years when I had a personal contact with great luminary and was able to learn so many things, not only of science, but of spirituality and in general living. I was given the charge of making the drawings of all the chemical structures, and he was very particular that all the current molecules, the medicinal agents, they should be drawn in 3-dimensional shape. That is, if the molecule is chiral in nature, all the aspects of stereochemistry must be shown in the structure. That way he was very critical. The structure should be uniform and the nomenclature should be according to IUPAC. So I was the only one given the charge of drawing the structure and chemically telling them. And that was the period I learned so much from him. He was a great human being with a great sense of humility, very humble man. I pay my homage to this meeting and will end that death is mundane, but his life was a miracle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kapoor. I now request Dr. Saranjit Singh from Naipur, Mohali to present a few words.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, Dr. Grove, for inviting me. I know we are running late and I'll be very, very short. I have the privilege of being at Punjab University since 1959, first on the campus, residence of campus, and then being a part of pharmacy department from 1974 onwards. And of course, the 3 generations of our family have been at Punjab University. But I had the privilege to be the first employee of Naipur Mohali. And by that virtue, I had close association with Dr. Nityanand, as has been expressed that he was the first person who had been involved in making the whole proposal for Naipur. To be very short, to tell you that Dr. Naipur used to sit with us in the meetings when we were framing the syllabus for the whole institute, the new institute. And the whole endeavor was, which was built in the initial proposal, it was sent to the Prime Minister for approval and the Government of India for approval. That each institute, like he sent Naveen to Punjab University Pharmacy Department for his education, considering it as the premier most institute at that time. And when NIPER was coming, it had to be different from all other institutions in the country, pharmacy in the country. And I was surprised when he was setting up the course of medicinal chemistry. Instead of, let us say, organic synthesis 1 in the first semester, organic synthesis in the second semester, he said, I want the course to be nomenclature, given the nomenclature as logics in organic synthesis. Logics in organic synthesis 1, logics in organic synthesis 2. Then a course named as Basics of Drug Action. What his intention was, I talked to him, what is your intention that you were saying that it has to be given, what is intention? And it is very important for students over here to, what he gave wisdom at that time, his vision which we carry till today, till my retirement from NIPER after 27 years, we are carrying that, and now all other people are carrying it. It is, he said, I want NIPER to impart education to students to equip them to be the best pharmaceutical scientists, technocrats, and the managers for industry. And you need to equip them with the science of doing science. Don't equip with science alone. You equip them with science of doing science. It's a very different thing to understand. If we spend 1 minute of what he said to me, science of doing science. It's a very different, I will say, and that is what we, NIPER, has been appreciated, Dr. Bhardwaj, everybody has been talking about, that is a premier institute in the country at the level of IIT, same institute of national importance. And of course, I cannot forget the contribution, the vision of Dr. Kishan Singh, who really brought the idea and concept of a Central Institute of Pharmacy and brought NIPER into existence. I have to tell Naveen and Sonia, the kids of Dr. Nitya Anand, that you not only have lost a father. Whenever I used to meet Dr. Nitya Anand, as Dr. Kapoor has mentioned, later I was also a member of Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, scientific body, and whenever he used to come to NIPER, he used to hold hand with a great warmth. So it is not that you have lost father, we also feel that we have lost father. So I pray for his soul to rest in peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Saranjeet Singh. Thank you very much. Next is again a scientist from NIPER, Professor Rahul Jain, who is not present here, but has sent a brief message. Allow me to read it out. Professor Rahul Jain says, I am traveling and thus unable to attend the memorial meeting in honor of Dr. Nitya Anand. Please mute yourself. All the attendees, please mute yourselves. I'll continue. Dr. Rahul Jain says, my association with Dr. Nitya Anand was not professional at first, but at a different level. He was the PhD advisor of my dad, Dr. P.C. Jain, and later his colleague at CDRI. I started my PhD with him in 1984, and later my younger brother, Dr. Sanjeev Jain, also did PhD under Dr. Nitya Anand. For me, he was not a teacher, but a grand teacher. That he himself explained when I submitted thesis. Later, he kept in constant touch with our family and was instrumental in my joining NIPER, Mohali, an institute he was very fond of, and Dr. Nitya Anand is responsible for the development of NIPER as an institute of excellence. In essence, Dr. Nitya Anand is an institution builder without any parallel. He built CDRI to an institute of drug discovery and NIPER as an institute of eminence in pharmaceutical education and research. His absence will be missed by one and all, but his guidance will always be in our hearts. We will remember him always as a person of great heart and the best medicinal chemist India produced. With thanks to Professor Rahul Jain, we now proceed. And the next person to speak is Dr. Anil Kumar, Chairperson of Pharmaceutical Science Punjab University.
Thank you, ma'am. As the chairperson of the Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences, since I'm very young in that, because the history of pharmaceutical sciences is very long. We have a 79 years of history. And when I check my history of Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences, there is very interesting things is there. When the Professor Harkishan Singh was a chairperson during 1976 to 1781, and Professor Nitya Anand ji was the first orator of our Pharmaceutical Science Society. And that society still exists and working, and we are calling a lot of Nobel laureate as an orator in that society. And we last November, we have called Professor G.P. Srivastava, G.P. Yadav, who is a Padma Shri. And it is very interesting event. I don't know how it. Professor Nityanand ji received a Padma Shri in 2012, and Professor Singh was received received the Padma Shri in 2017, and G.P. Yadav ji again Padma Shri. So I don't know how it is happening. It is all stories linked with each other. The person who worked with him, under him, all they received Padma Shri. There is very interesting relation. I don't know how. And another thing very important as a Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences, and Dr. Nitya Anand was very instrumental in developing the drug that is non-steroidal. And it is very, very important to know that drugs change the total maternal, you can say, reproductive health of the female. And right now, there is no drug which is very, very effective as compared to the Saheli drug. And currently the name is Chaya. And this drug is very important because it is a once daily dosing. It means the female need to take only once in a week, and that will help to the contraception and all. So that is giving a very good impact in maintaining of maternal reproductive health of the female. And that was the contribution I feel, as a pharmaceutical scientist, that cannot be, ignored so easily. It is a rememberable, these things, And with these words, I want to say thank you once again, and we'll see that such kind of people should be remembered all the time, and the contribution should also be in the form of some oration like this. Thank you once again for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Anil Kumarji. And now we request Dr. Sonal Singhal, Chairperson, Chemistry Department, who has provided this venue. Sonal.
Esteemed guests, colleagues, friends, and dear students. Actually, I feel I am not the appropriate person because I don't know very much about such a legendary person, because I joined this department in 2005 after completing my PhD from IIT Roorkee. So earlier I was not associated with Punjab University as well, but as I know from Grover sir about Professor Nitya Anand, so I searched from internet. So as we gather here, I want to say that as we gather here in the chemistry department, embrace the solemn responsibility of hosting the memorial meeting to honor the passing of esteemed Professor Nitya Anand. It is a moment for us to come together, not only to commemorate the life and legacy of a remarkable individual, but also to celebrate the profound impact he had on the academic community and beyond. Though this gathering, we pay homage to a visionary leader, a passionate researcher, and a kind soul who touched countless lives and whose contribution to the field of chemistry will forever remains etched in our hearts and the minds. Professor Anand was more than titles and achievement. He was a nurturing mentor, igniting a passion for science in country minds. He was not just a chemist, he was a beacon of hope, providing that science can change life for the better. Professor Nitya Anand may be gone, but his memories lives on in the lives he touched, the advancement he pioneered, and the spirit of scientific inquiry he ignited. Let us honor him by carrying the knowledge and building a hard, brighter future for all. We express our sincere appreciation to all the guests and speakers who have graced this memorable event with their presence. Together, let us ensure that the story of Professor Nitya Anand, the chemist, the leader, the human being, continue to echo through the halls of this department and beyond for generations to come. Thank you for joining us for this event. And in the last, I am thankful to Professor Arun Grover, Professor K. Adramveer ma'am, and Bhasin sir for giving us opportunity to hold this event in the chemistry department. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Now, Shri Dharamveer, President of SPSTI, will present a vote of thanks. Dharamveer.
Dr. Nitya Anand ji, Sonia ji, Professor Grover, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to present vote of thanks and pay my homage to a distinguished scientist, institution builder, who worked for the welfare of the humanity at large, Professor Nitya Anand. Before coming here, I was not very much familiar with the work that he had done or the service he had rendered to the nation, not only to the nation, but the humanity at large, which goes beyond the nation. In fact, we have so many such great people working in our own country about whom we know very little. So thank you very much for making us aware of the value of the work done by him. I also extend my heartfelt condolences to the family, and we hope his legacy will be maintained by students, by institutions, as well as the research workers across the country. I would also like to place a request before all of you that we should find a way to remember them, not only to pay homage, but to derive some kind of inspiration from them and their commitment, which made India better and a better country for every one of us. Finally, I once again thank the organizers for taking this opportunity and giving me an opportunity to be with you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and to those also who joined virtually through the Zoom platform. Thank you so much. And now you're invited for a cup of tea at the committee room.
Today's proceedings will be available on our website. My party कब लगा दोगे?